Welcome to Warriors of the World. Today, we travel to the heart of ancient Egypt to uncover the story of a pharaoh who defied time and left his mark on eternity. A leader who was a warrior, a builder, and a symbol of absolute power. This is the legacy of Ramses II, the greatest pharaoh of Egypt. But his story begins long before his temples and victories. Ramses was born in 1303 BCE, at a time when Egypt ruled the known world. His father, Pharaoh Seti I, was a formidable commander who expanded the empire's borders and strengthened the power of the 19th dynasty. From birth, Ramses was not treated as an ordinary child. He was the son of a living god, destined to rule the two lands. He was raised in the palaces of Memphis and Pi-Ramesses, surrounded by scholars, priests, and warriors. His education was not just intellectual but also physical and military. He learned to read and write hieroglyphs, studied religious arts, and mastered combat tactics from an early age. By the time he was 10, his father had named him commander of his own battalion. At an age when other children played with toys, Ramses trained with a sword. But being a warrior was not enough. A pharaoh had to inspire fear and respect. From a young age, Ramses was taken on military campaigns to witness the brutality of war firsthand. He was not a prince who stayed behind palace walls. He walked among soldiers and listened to their stories. His father taught him that a leader's true strength lay in his people's trust and his ability to crush his enemies without mercy. Seti I knew that his son would inherit an empire at its peak, but also full of challenges. Nubians in the south, Hittites in the north, political conspiracies in the court. Egypt was always on the brink of war. But young Ramses showed no fear. With each passing year, his name carried more weight. And when destiny called, he was ready to claim his place as the most powerful pharaoh Egypt had ever seen. When Seti I died, Ramses II ascended the throne of Egypt at just 25 years old. But unlike other inexperienced young pharaohs, he was already a battle-hardened leader, a man who understood politics, war, and absolute power. His first mission was not expansion, it was consolidation. He knew that his reign began in a world full of enemies. The Nubians in the south were constantly testing Egypt's strength, and the Hittites, a powerful empire in Anatolia, had spent years trying to push Egypt out of Syria. Ramses understood that his first trial as pharaoh would be on the battlefield. To demonstrate his might, he launched a series of lightning-fast campaigns against the Nubians, crushing their resistance and securing Egypt's control over the Kushite gold mines. But his eyes were fixed on a greater enemy, the Hittites. If he wanted to be remembered as a great pharaoh, he would have to face them. But not everything was resolved by the sword. Ramses also understood the power of propaganda. From the very start of his reign, he commissioned colossal temples and statues of himself, portraying his image as a living god, an unbeatable warrior, and Egypt's ultimate protector. Every victory was immortalized in inscriptions, and every campaign was exaggerated to prove his invincibility. He was not just ruling Egypt, he was crafting his own legend. But the true test was yet to come. Thousands of miles to the north, the Hittite king had assembled a colossal army and was marching south. Egypt and its young pharaoh were about to face the greatest battle in their history. The war against the Hittites was about to begin. Ramses II knew that if he wanted to secure his legacy, he had to defeat the Hittites on the battlefield. But the Hittites were no ordinary enemy. They were one of the most powerful civilizations of the ancient world, with a massive army and war chariots that could crush any formation. Their king, Muwatalli II, was determined to push the Egyptians out of Syria once and for all. In the 5th year of his reign, Ramses II marched north with his army, determined to capture the city of Kadesh, a key point in the ongoing territorial dispute. His army was divided into 4 divisions: Ammonius, Ra, Ta, and Set. But Ramses had no idea he was walking into a trap. As the Egyptian forces approached Kadesh, 2 captured Hittite spies revealed that Muwatalli's army was still far away. It was a lie. The Hittites were already hidden nearby, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Believing he had the advantage, Ramses advanced with the Ammonius division and set up camp west of the city, unaware of the disaster about to unfold. Suddenly, thousands of Hittite chariots stormed out from behind the hills and smashed into the unsuspecting Egyptian troops. The Ra division, marching to join Ramses, was completely annihilated. The battlefield became a scene of chaos and destruction. But in this moment of crisis, Ramses II did something that would change history. Instead of fleeing or accepting defeat, he took his war chariot and personally charged into the enemy ranks. With only his personal guard, he cut through the battlefield, striking the enemy with almost superhuman fury. The attack was so shocking that the Hittites, overwhelmed by the ferocity of the pharaoh, began to retreat. As the Ta division finally arrived as reinforcements, the Egyptians managed to stabilize the battle. The Hittites, unprepared for such a fierce counterattack, were forced to retreat behind Kadesh's walls. The war wasn't over, but Ramses had done the impossible, surviving an ambush and turning the tide of battle. Although Ramses declared Kadesh a great victory in his inscriptions, the reality was different. Neither the Egyptians nor the Hittites could take the city. The conflict would continue for years until both empires realized that no single battle would decide the region's fate. And then, something unprecedented in human history happened. After years of fighting without a clear winner, both Egypt and the Hittites realized that continuing the war would only lead to more destruction. And so, Ramses II and Hattusili III, the new Hittite king, did something revolutionary. They signed the first known peace treaty in history. The Treaty of Kadesh, written on clay tablets in Hittite and inscribed in Egyptian hieroglyphs, stated that both empires would respect each other and provide military aid if attacked by a third party. It also included an extradition agreement for fugitives and a pact of cooperation between the two powers. But this wasn't just a military document. Ramses II, ever the master of propaganda, used the treaty as proof of his greatness. He had it inscribed on the walls of Egyptian temples, not as a negotiation, but as a demonstration of his dominance. To the Egyptian people, their pharaoh had not only defeated the Hittites, he had forced them to submit. As a symbol of the new alliance, Ramses II married a Hittite princess, Mathornefer, sealing the peace between the two nations. The Treaty of Kadesh not only ended a war but set a new standard for international diplomacy. Today, a replica of this treaty stands at the United Nations headquarters in New York as a symbol of global diplomacy. But while the war had ended, Ramses' mission was far from over. Now, he would begin building his eternal legacy. Ramses II didn't just want to be remembered as a great warrior. He wanted his reign to be immortalized in stone, in monuments that would defy time itself. But building temples wasn't enough. He wanted his own capital, a city that bore his name and overshadowed all others. Thus was born Pi-Ramesses, the great city of the pharaoh. Located in the Nile Delta, Pi-Ramesses wasn't just an administrative center, it was a masterpiece of Egyptian engineering. The city boasted wide avenues, colossal temples, shrines dedicated to the gods, and a royal palace with vast gardens and artificial lakes. But what was most impressive was its scale. It is believed to have housed more than 300,000 people, making it one of the largest cities of the ancient world. From Pi-Ramesses, the pharaoh ruled his empire with absolute authority. The city was strategically positioned to control trade and military routes. Its docks received ships loaded with gold, grain, and exotic goods from across the known world. It was the heart of Egypt, a symbol of Ramses' unmatched power. But Pi-Ramesses wasn't just a political center, it was also the epicenter of the pharaoh's propaganda. Here, Ramses ordered the construction of massive statues of himself, portraying his image as a living god. The temple walls bore inscriptions of his battles and achievements, always presenting him as the undefeated ruler of Egypt. However, over time, Pi-Ramesses would fade. Shifts in the Nile's course made the city uninhabitable, and it was abandoned centuries after Ramses' death. Yet, its ruins would remain, silent witnesses to the ambition of a pharaoh who refused to be forgotten. But Ramses didn't just build cities, he left his mark on some of the most majestic temples in Egypt. If there's one thing that immortalized Ramses II, it was his obsession with construction. No other pharaoh built as much as he did. From towering temples to obelisks that reached the heavens, his mark was left on every corner of Egypt. But his greatest masterpiece was the temple of Abu Simbel. Located in Nubia, Abu Simbel wasn't just a temple, it was a declaration of power. At its entrance, four colossal statues of Ramses, over 20 meters tall, gazed upon the desert with the majesty of a god. Inside, intricate reliefs depicted his victories, especially the Battle of Kadesh, where he appeared as a divine warrior crushing his enemies. But the most astonishing feature of Abu Simbel was its alignment with the sun. Twice a year, at sunrise, the sun's rays would penetrate the temple, illuminating the statues of the gods, except for the god of darkness, who remained in the shadows. This breathtaking phenomenon still occurs today. Further north, in Luxor and Karnak, Ramses expanded and beautified the temples, adding even more statues and obelisks, reinforcing his image as the eternal pharaoh. His obsession with immortality drove him to carve his name over monuments of previous pharaohs, as if he sought to erase history and ensure only he would be remembered. But while he left his mark on Egypt, a new challenge was about to emerge, one that would test not just his reign but his place in human history. To the Egyptians, the pharaoh was not just a king. He was a god on earth, the incarnation of Horus and the chosen one of the gods to rule the two lands. And no pharaoh exploited this image more than Ramses II. From the early years of his reign, Ramses turned his image into an omnipresent symbol. His face and name were everywhere: temples, obelisks, colossal statues, even on monuments of previous pharaohs, where he had his cartouche carved over theirs. To the Egyptians, this was not mere arrogance. If a pharaoh's name was forgotten, his soul would vanish in the afterlife. Ramses ensured that would never happen to him. But his propaganda went beyond stone. He ordered his victories to be depicted as epic tales, where he always appeared as an unbeatable warrior. In the Battle of Kadesh, for instance, his inscriptions showed the Hittites utterly crushed before his divine power, even though reality was far less one-sided. Even art was altered to glorify him. Depictions of Ramses II show him with an imposing physique, larger than any other human in paintings and reliefs. His image was everywhere, constantly reminding his people that no ruler was greater than him. But devotion to Ramses did not end with his life. Many Egyptians began to worship him as a god while he was still alive, and centuries after his death, his cult continued to grow. In later periods, his name was added to lists of Egyptian gods, making him an official deity. But while Ramses secured his immortality in Egypt, a different story began to circulate, one that would place him at the center of one of history's greatest mysteries. Among all the stories about Ramses II, one has sparked more debate than any other: his possible connection to the biblical Exodus. The Bible tells of a pharaoh who enslaved the Hebrews and then faced the 10 plagues before Moses led his people to freedom. For centuries, many have speculated that this pharaoh could have been Ramses II. There are reasons behind this theory. The city of Pi-Ramesses, built by the pharaoh, is mentioned in the Bible as one of the places where the Hebrews were enslaved. Additionally, Ramses ruled during a time of great prosperity but also faced border uprisings, which could align with a crisis caused by the sudden departure of a large group of slaves. However, there are also issues with this hypothesis. To this day, no Egyptian records mention the Exodus directly, nor is there clear evidence of simultaneous catastrophes resembling the biblical plagues. Furthermore, the Egyptians rarely documented defeats or events that questioned the pharaoh's divine authority. Some historians suggest that if the Exodus happened, it may have been under a different pharaoh, with the story being passed down orally for generations before being recorded in the Bible. Others believe the Exodus is a blend of multiple historical events, mixed with symbolic and religious elements. What is undeniable is that Ramses II became a figure that transcended his time. Whether as a god, a conqueror, or the antagonist of one of the most famous stories in the world, his name remains alive to this day. But even Egypt's greatest pharaoh could not escape time. After decades of rule, the end of his journey was near. Gracias por acompañarnos en este viaje por la historia del más grande de los faraones. No olvide suscribirte, activar el sonilo, comentar y compartir este video. Nos vemos en la próxima campana aquí en Guerreros del Mundo. After more than 6 decades on the throne, Ramses II became Egypt's longest-reigning pharaoh. He ruled for 66 years and lived to nearly 90, an astonishing feat in an era when the average life expectancy was barely 40. To many Egyptians, he was a living god who seemed to defy time itself. But even the greatest warriors cannot escape aging. Over the years, Ramses' strength began to fade. Historical records suggest that in his final years, he suffered from severe arthritis, extreme dental issues, and other ailments. His skin grew fragile, his movements slowed, and his once glorious reign became a battle against his own decline. Meanwhile, the world around him was changing. His sons and generals began maneuvering for power in secret, waiting for the inevitable end of the pharaoh. For Egypt, Ramses' death would mark the conclusion of a golden era. Few leaders in history have ever left such an enormous void. In his final breath, surrounded by priests and nobles, Ramses II ceased to be a man and became a legend. But his story didn't end there. His mummy, discovered centuries later, would reveal the secrets of his life and the astonishing preservation of his body. Even in death, Ramses refused to be forgotten. Great leaders leave their mark on history, but few have ever achieved what Ramses II did. His influence can still be felt today, in his monuments, in Egyptian culture, and in his image as the ultimate pharaoh. His legacy was so immense that his successors tried to emulate him, adopting his name to gain prestige. Over the centuries, Egypt never had another pharaoh like him. Ramses didn't just rule Egypt, he defined it. Even after his death, his story endured. In 1881, his mummy was discovered in a hidden cache alongside other great pharaohs. When examined, scientists were astonished by its preservation. Centuries after his passing, his body still bore the face of a man who had defied time itself. But his legacy isn't just confined to history. His name continues to appear in films, video games, novels, and theories about the Exodus. Ramses II is more than a pharaoh, he is a symbol of immortality. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life of Egypt's greatest pharaoh. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, comment, and share this video. See you in the next campaign here at Warriors of the World.